Hi everybody, this is John Kroll, Head of the Guidance Department at Wachusett. I'm just going to go through the process of giving you the presentation that we gave to parents last week in case you missed it and you're a senior parent, or if you were there and you want to recap again, or if you're a senior who missed it this week during activity period. Here it is for you. I'll also post just the link to the presentation itself without this voiceover so that you can go through it at your own leisure and skip through the slides. So we're going to spend the bulk of our time on these agenda items with item number 2, the application deadlines and tasks. Because most of the stuff, the first part we've talked about last year, we'll do a quick recap. But the application deadlines and tasks is the most important part of this presentation. So in terms of the college search process, this is all things that we put out there last year, just kind of a recap of things to consider. Definitely attend fairs, go to open houses and tours, ideally official open houses and tours so that colleges know that you actually went there because that shows an interest during the application process. Also at WPI on the 15th of October, they have a college fair. There's going to be many colleges there from all over. It's a great time for students to meet admissions representatives and talk about the colleges, learn more about the colleges, etc. It's a great opportunity. Definitely, we recommend going to that. If you haven't used some of the search tools in Naviance, you have a lot of great tools available. One of them is Supermatch. That allows you to put in all sorts of different filters in terms of looking for a specific college, much more than what you can see on the screen there. And then it'll give you recommendations of colleges and what's a match. It doesn't have every college in it, but it has a lot, and it is a good opportunity to sort of, again, broaden your horizons in terms of looking at other schools and finding recommendations. That's one of many features in Naviance to find colleges. I'm going to show you one more that'll help with kind of figuring out if it's a safety target or reach school, which we'll talk about in a little bit, a couple more minutes. So this one's called scattergrams. And what this does, it's probably my favorite feature in Naviance. What this does is it actually enables you to get a sense of how other students from Wachusett are doing at getting into some schools. So if you're looking at a specific college, so in this case, we've got Boston College that we're looking at. The higher the mark, the higher the GPA for a student, and the more to the right the mark, the higher the SAT. Now this is based on old SAT scores. The scoring system changed, but the screen looks the same on your end, and it's the same idea. So the long blue line that runs along the top is the average Wachusett student's GPA, and then the other line that runs vertically is the average accepted student's SAT score. So again, these are accepted students from Wachusett to Boston College. Green boxes indicate kids that got in. Red X's are kids that indicate kids that didn't get in. And blue diamonds are kids that were waitlisted. So the best place to be would be as far right and as high as you possibly can be. But if you're sort of outside of both of these boxes or both of these lines, you're going to be in sort of, safety territory for the most part. Every college is a little bit different, but that's what we would consider a safety school for the most part. And then if you're right near where the two lines intersect, that's going to be more of a target school. And then your circle indicates where you are. And in this case, this student for Boston College, I would say, is a little bit of a reach, but certainly not a dramatic reach. I mean, she or he is right on a student who did get in. So it's not perfect in that it only is looking at GPA and SAT score. It's not looking at extracurricular activities, letters of recommendation, essay, anything like that. It's just looking at those two pieces of information, which at some schools is more important than others. There are some schools that SAT scores don't matter at all. But if a college requires the SAT, this is a good tool to use as one of many. In addition to all of those things, we also have admissions reps from these schools that come to Wachusett and meet with students in small groups. Small groups consist of anywhere between 1 and 15 students. It's a great opportunity for them to get to know you and for students to get to know the admissions reps and ask questions. These are admissions reps that are usually making decisions about who to accept. So the more face time you get with these folks, the better in most circumstances. This is a feature that we've had for the last couple of years, and for some reason this class of 2018, they're not signing up for these college visits, and we've been promoting them more than we ever have before, so I'm not sure what the disconnect is. But essentially, students just need to log into colleges, into Naviance, click on colleges, and then click on the view upcoming college visits. They actually have to sign up in advance, a few days in advance, but then They can come down as long as their teacher's okay with them missing that class if it's not during a study. So what they'd do is they'd click on the college they want to sign up for, and then they'd go through the registration process, and they'd get to this screen, which students should take a screenshot of or can print out, and that would serve as their pass to come down to guidance at that time. So we strongly, strongly recommend students sign up for these. This is a great opportunity for them. Some other things to keep in mind, college admissions rates, we haven't really talked about that. If you see a college that's accepting 85% of students, that tells you something about that school and the difficulty in terms of getting into that school versus a school that's 7%. So you could have the best SAT scores and the best GPA, but if you're looking at a school, usually an Ivy League school or one of the military academies, are like 7 to 11%, that's very, very super competitive. So that might be a reach school no matter how you slice it. Most colleges recalculate GPA. What that means is we give students a GPA based off of their grades, obviously. But some colleges don't want to give a GPA based off the same classes that we give a GPA off of. For instance, if you're heavily into music and art, you'll get a GPA that's comprised of all of your courses, including your music and art classes. But a college may look at your transcript and just decide to base your GPA off of the core academics. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. I think we do a nice job at giving students realistic GPAs, but just know that most colleges, if not all colleges at this point, recalculate GPAs to their own formulas, which are not generally public. We do weight GPAs. So a CP/CPA course nets you 0 points, honors nets you 5, and 10 points is given to AP courses, which is pretty much how the state colleges weigh them as well. Keep in mind that a choice of major may change admissions criteria. So you may look at a school and think, hey, this is a good target school for me, but I want to apply as a nursing major or engineering. Those are the most popular and most competitive majors to get into. So it's really important to keep that in mind, that you might be looking at the scattergram, for instance, of a school, but you're not looking at the scattergram for a specific major, which might be more competitive. And then we do have MCAS scholarships. The John and Abigail Adams scholarship letters are sent out this November. The conflict letters were sent last spring, and that requires additional material. The key thing to remember with those scholarships is that they do waive tuition at Massachusetts state schools, but that's not a significant amount of money. It's something, and it's worthwhile, certainly, but a lot of times people get excited because they think, oh, it's tuition and it's all the money, but it's not. Tuition at a Massachusetts state college is not very much. It's a couple $1,000s. It's the fees at a Massachusetts state college that actually add up to the bulk of the bill. So just keep that in mind. It's definitely good, but sometimes people get a little too excited about those scholarship letters. So we've talked a little bit about reach, target, and safety. So these are some general definitions. So you get students that apply anywhere to 8 to 10 colleges. Certainly some students apply to less. A lot of students apply to less, and some students apply to more. But generally we see 8 to 10 colleges. You've got a reach school that a student's going to meet some of the admissions criteria, but not all, or the college has a low acceptance rate overall. Target, student's profile generally fits the admissions criteria. And a safety school is, students' SAT scores and GPA for the most part are above the average for this particular college. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're definitely going to get in. It's a safety school, so there's a good chance of you getting in, but it's not a guarantee. So it's important to remember that. And consider financial safety schools. So you want to have a mix of different schools that not only are reach, target, and safety in terms of getting in, but are reach, target, and safety in terms of cost. Private schools tend to cost a lot more than public schools. So you might be looking at BU that's, $65,000 a year versus UMass Amherst that's like $27,000. So that's important to keep in mind. Now, private schools cost more, sticker price, but oftentimes they can give more aid because they have more money to give. So it kind of works both ways. So you want to hedge your bets and apply to a mix of different schools. Your guidance counselor can really help with that. That's what we're here for. So this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today. It's on the application tasks. So there's a few things to kind of keep in mind. We're going to use the term early and regular a lot, so it's important to know what those mean. So colleges that have early deadlines, so that could be early action or early decision. Those are typically deadlines November 1st, November 15th, December 1st. Anything before January would be considered an early deadline. About 30 to 40% of our students apply early to a school, early action. But of the early deadlines, you have two different distinctions. You get early decision and early action. Early decisions, it's a binding agreement with the school. So they're basically saying, if you accept me, I will definitely go to your school. Colleges do sometimes like to see that, but not very many students do that overall, and it's a small handful. I'd say I've had probably 4 students in the last 6 years that have done that. It's a very, very small percentage. It really has to be the perfect school for a student, and the student should be well qualified for that school. You can only do that with one college, and if you get into that one college, you have to withdraw any other applications, non-early decision applications, obviously, because that's only one, but any early action or regular decision colleges you're supposed to withdraw if you get in. Early action is different. You can apply to many early action schools. You can do that and also apply to regular action schools. But essentially, you're saying, I'm interested in your school. Here's my application materials, and you'll get an answer usually January or even before. Whereas for regular decision, the timeline is usually here back in like April, maybe March. So about 30 to 40% of students apply to at least one school via early action. You can apply to multiple. It's not binding, and there's no limit. You can also apply to regular. So regular is just simply January and later. If you go beyond January 15th, college might have a deadline of March 15th, but we would never recommend you wait till March 15th for that deadline. You want to get that application material out really no later than January 15th. And I've always told my students in the past, let's get it out before Christmas break so you don't have to worry about it. And then you have rolling in the middle there. Rolling's just kind of first come, first served. Whoever sends in their application material gets the first decision. Could be a yes, could be a no, but then they review it at that time when it comes in and it's complete. Then they give you a decision. Then they go on to the next person. So rolling is usually, you're better off if a school's just rolling admissions, you're better off the earlier the better. So some things to keep in mind with this. You can't apply to one college early and then regular. You only have one application for a school. College may decide to defer you to the regular round, but that's their decision. So sometimes people think, well, I'll apply early, and if I don't get in, I'll apply regular. It doesn't work like that. You either apply early or you apply regular. I've already said most students who apply early to some colleges will also apply regular to others. You really only want to apply early to schools if you fit the admissions criteria or a college recommends you apply early. So in other words, you don't really want to apply early to a school that's a reach. Because you're really competing against students who are also applying early, which generally means that they're sort of well put together, they're well organized, they're ready to apply early, which sometimes translates to a higher average GPA. So it's important to kind of keep that in mind. You don't want to apply it early to a school that's a reach, unless the college, you go to a tour and a college says, no, we need you to apply early because it's going to show interest and that's going to help. That's important, so rely on the college to make that recommendation to you, but if they don't, I would say don't apply early to a reach school. And sometimes you have to apply early for a specific major. UMass Lowell just sent us an email yesterday and said, we're only looking for nursing applicants during the early action round. So that's usually the case for nursing in general. They really need you to apply early. Engineering's another one. Talk with your guidance counselor, but those are the ones that they really want to see that you're applying early, and they won't really consider your application if it's a regular one. And, generally the earlier the better for housing and scholarships and whatnot. The earlier the better in general. So these are some things that students are going to need to do in order to make sure that they're ready for their early application tasks. So the tasks are the same for both regular students and early students, except the early application students have to do them earlier. So here are the tasks. If you have a college that has a deadline of before January, your essay should be in the final stages. You should be working on the Common App. You should have last spring, for everybody, completed both the teacher and the counselor letter of rec surveys and the resume. You should update your colleges I'm applying to list in Naviance to indicate your earlies by October 16th. And then by October 16th, you're making an appointment with your guidance counselor to provide them with the gold transcript request forms. All right, that's really important. Students can have whatever information they want in Naviance, and we obviously want a lot of information. We want the colleges in there. but no transcripts or letters of recommendation or any of the school information is going to be sent to a college without a physical form filled out by the student requesting that particular college get the information. So that's probably the biggest key of this. We have gold papers down here. They're called transcript request forms. That's what we're going to use to review what colleges the student's applying to and what colleges we need to send those letters of recommendation and students' transcripts to. If right now you're not thinking about applying early and you're thinking about just applying regular, the things that you should be thinking about are your deadlines are going to have a January 1st or later. You should be working on your essay. You should be starting the common application. And on or before December 1st, you're going to make the same appointment with your guidance counselor and provide him or her with the blue transcript request form. And again, that's going to be the form that tells us what schools you're definitely applying to and where you're requesting a transcript be sent. Often we have students who, again, apply early and regular. Again, not to the same school, but they do different schools at different times, and that's fine. So we might meet with a student to hand in their gold transcript form, and then later on December 1st with their blue transcript form. It's important that you schedule an appointment with your guidance counselor because we have a lot of kids coming down doing this, so it needs to be scheduled. You can't just drop it off because your guidance counselor is going to want to review it with you. It's important to note that students are responsible for sending their SAT and ACT scores to colleges. We cannot do that. Colleges want them directly from the students through the SAT and ACT. You have a couple of SAT and ACT tests coming up. The late registration for the October 7th test is tomorrow, just September 27th. Then you have the November 4th test for the SAT. The registration deadline is October 5th. That's generally too late for early applications, but you can check with the college. If your college is November 1st and November 15th, they may not accept the results of that test because that test results, those aren't going to be available till the end of November. But some colleges may be okay with it if you indicated on the Common App that you're taking that test. But check with your college. You have the ACT offered on October 28th. The deadline has passed, but I bet there's a late deadline that's probably still going on. That's not offered at Wachusett. And then it's important to note that some colleges may require subject tests. So that would be, a test in a specific subject area. It could be history, it could be physics, it could be French. They're like AP tests almost. So if you haven't taken those and your colleges require them, it's important to sign up for those. And you have two opportunities, October, November. You can also do it in December. Not every subject's offered in the same month. So it's important to check the College Board's website. But you can take usually 2 to 3 SAT subject tests at a time. So if you needed 2 or 3, you could potentially take the October tests and get them all done. But talk with your guidance counselor for more info about that. Your college essay, this is a huge, important piece of the application process. It's important because you don't have the ability to interview with every admissions rep from every college, right? So this is the only time they're going to get a piece of who you are as an individual that's not in your application somewhere else. It's a very important part of the process. You also might have colleges that require supplemental essays. So they want this main essay, but then they have additional questions. And sometimes students spend months on the college essay, and then they just kind of blow through those other questions because they just think it's just quick, but it's not. If I'm a college and I specifically ask supplemental essays, I'm probably going to read those first. So it's important to do just as thorough of a job on those as the main essay. Apologize for the spelling and the typo here, but keep your focus narrow and personal. It should be personal. You got to support your main ideas with examples. Be specific. This should be about you. The college needs to get a good idea of who you are as a person as a result of your essay. So we have different waves. They're wave 1, wave 2, and wave 3. It's just the list of tasks that you need to do and when you need to do them. So this is the wave 1 tasks. I won't read them all because they're right there for you. But these are the wave 1 tasks that were from the spring. These should have been done at the end of your junior year. Then you have the wave 2 tasks. The deadline is this fall, and it depends on if you're applying early or not. But you're essentially looking at these tasks. You must make sure you're completing the Common App. There's a FERPA waiver in the Common App. I'll spend a couple of seconds on the FERPA waiver. So the FERPA waiver basically gives us the ability to release your information to these schools. That's what the FERPA waiver does. But on it, it also asks if you want to waive your right to see your letters of recommendation. So sometimes students don't want to fill that out because they want to read their letters first. That's not what that means. They're basically saying if you waive your right to read your letters of recommendation, you're waiving your right when you're in college, not now. Right now, nobody can see their letters of recommendation unless the teacher or the guidance counselor offers that. It's not information that you are required to have as a student. So it's important to keep in mind that that FERPA waiver only applies when you're in college. So generally, colleges really want to see that waived. So you want to kind of waive your rights to read your letters of rec. Most teachers are going to let you see them anyway. Certainly most guidance counselors will too. So it's really not doing you any harm by waiving that. And again, it's what colleges prefer to see anyway. You want to make sure your Common App college list matches what's in Naviance and it's updated. You want to put your application type in Naviance. I'll highlight that in a second. You want to match your Common App and your Naviance accounts together. You want to complete the transcript request forms. All of those things have to be done before you meet with your guidance counselor to drop off your transcript request sheet. Those 6 things have to be done. Then the other things that you also have to be done but can be done after are you got to send your SAT scores, your ACT scores through the websites. You should be working on completing your essays. If you're applying for financial aid, you have 2 different forms to consider. You've got the FAFSA that used to be due after January 1st of the senior year, but that's changed last year. That should be done in the fall. And the CSS profile. Some colleges, if you're applying for financial aid, they're going to want that CSS profile as well. So it's just an additional financial aid application. So some colleges, usually private schools, and a limited number at that though, require the CSS profile and the FAFSA, whereas most colleges just require the FAFSA. But both are in the fall. We talked about college visits and the importance of them, and the fall SATs are not too late to register for. So I just mentioned the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Also, you have other resources. So MIFA, I believe it's the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority. They're an organization, it's a nonprofit organization in Massachusetts that will help. They're actually coming to our school this Thursday, September 28th in the auditorium. Check our website for time and additional information. That's really important that we recommend parents go to, especially if they haven't gone through the financial aid process in the last year. It's really important that you come to that presentation or go to a MIFA presentation. But that's a resource you can access. They have a good website with tons of good information. We also learned of a new organization nearby called Mass Edco. They'll help you fill out the FAFSA. And then there's also FAFSA days where you can actually go to a specific location with your tax information and they'll help parents all at once fill out their FAFSA. And the nearest one, the closest one in time, is on November 15th at Bay Path High School. That's on the later side. I would try to get that done earlier. But certainly if you wait till November 15th, you'll be in okay shape. But it's a good opportunity to, again, get some help with it. Real quick, just the Common App and Naviance, they integrate together. These are the things that you got to do. So that's your Common App. It's a screenshot of the Common App page. You got to make sure you're applying to commonapp.org and creating an account and setting up an account. Then this is what the screen looks like on Naviance. This is where you actually input your Common App email address and it'll sync up to your Naviance account. So both Common App and Naviance talk to each other. This is a really important step. We can't send your transcripts without you doing this. And we won't accept that transcript request sheet without this being done. Talk to us if you have trouble with it, but this needs to happen. When you log into Naviance as a student, on the home screen, there's a video on how to do this. It's like 2 minutes. These are what the 2 screens look like. That's the Common App list, and this is the Naviance list. So this is what I was talking about when it said input application type. You never want to see a question where it says delivery type. So if you're looking on the bottom, it says Harvard College, and then it says delivery type, and there's a question mark. That's telling us that that's a Common App school, but we don't know if you're applying on the Common App or if you're applying just through their website, for instance. So it's important that you look at Wave 2, look at the Wave 2 handout where it says input application type, and it tells you how to fix that. You never want to see a question mark there. So Before and after you submit your applications, just make sure there's no error messages. Make sure things are typed. I can't tell you the number of students that I've looked at Common App applications for, and they don't capitalize their names or their street names. It's surprising to me. So just make sure it's complete and there's no typos and spelling mistakes. In Naviance, that's where we send the transcript, the teacher letters of rec, the counselor letter of rec, and the school report forms. Once you give us that transcript request sheet. So again, you're responsible for your SAT scores, the actual application, fees, essays, all that stuff. So dates to keep in mind. So we talked about all these dates. October 16th and December 1st are the two key ones. If you're applying to any schools early, we need that transcript request sheet by then. If you're applying to schools not early, regular decision, January and later, the deadline to turn in that transcript request sheet is December 1st. On October 17th and on December 2nd, we shut off the ability for students to add their schools into colleges that I'm applying to in Naviance. That's just so, nothing slips past us. You can certainly add another school that you're applying to if you give us another sheet and talk with your guidance counselor. So you've got two different types of scholarships. You've got national and you've got local. The national scholarships, you generally have larger values for those. Those are sometimes $5,000 or tens of thousands of dollars. Those are some websites where you can access national ones, or even the MIFA's the state one. You can apply for those anytime, including through the spring of your senior year. But they're more selective and they're competitive, right? Because you have so many students all across the nation applying to them. Then you have local scholarships. These are Wachusett-specific scholarships. So you have a smaller pool of applicants. They're not generally for that much money compared to the national scholarships, maybe $500 or a couple $100, maybe $1,000. But certainly you have a smaller pool of applicants, so a higher chance of getting them. Those are in Naviance, and they're usually updated in the winter/spring of your senior year. So that would be generally like February, March. And this is where you find them. So when you log into Naviance, go to the bottom there where it says scholarships and money on the scholarship list. So right now, if you checked on it, today is September 26, 2017. If you check that, there's not going to be a lot there. But if you check it again in February and March, it's going to be a lot more there. So it's important to know that over the course of the last few years, you've had a big difference in what colleges have done to help students. And what I mean by that is, as the colleges have gotten more and more expensive over the last 10, 15, 20 years, the Massachusetts state schools are seeing more applicants because they're cheaper. So they've had to increase their criteria. So it used to be somewhat easy to get into UMass Amherst. Now the average accepted GPA for UMass Amherst is probably around 91 or 92. So it's a very competitive school to get into, and that's kind of sprawled out through all of the other colleges. Most colleges are much harder to get into. We've had a slide up earlier that said the minimum GPA for getting into Worcester State was an 83, which is like a B- or a B. So with that, you have these partnerships that have come about at these community colleges. So Quinsig and the Mount are the two closest ones. They have these really cool programs for students to save a ton of money. You go to Quinsig for 2 years through either mass transfer or the Commonwealth Commitment. Those are two different programs that they have. You can get into a guaranteed seat at a 4-year school. So you go to Quinsig for 2 years, you do okay. It's like a B- average they're looking for. And you get a guaranteed seat at a school like UMass Amherst. That's pretty awesome. The Commonwealth Commitment Program also allows for tuition breaks or freezes. So in other words, what they're going to do is give you a rebate check. I think it's for 10% of the tuition at the end of every semester so that you can use in the bookstore, for instance. Or they'll even freeze the tuition. So if you go in right now as a freshman next year, you're going to pay what you would pay at UMass Amherst 2 years from now at the current rate. So they'll freeze tuition. So it's going to save you a ton of money. Quinsig and the Mount are very, very inexpensive. And a good way to earn an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree for basically almost half the cost of what a student might just spend at 4 years at another school. And then wrapping up, just some additional information to keep in mind. Two important things. So the additional information first, if you're an athlete and you're going to play at the D1 or D2 level, make sure you're applying or registering to the NCAA clearinghouse. FAFSA and the CSS profile for financial aid. Make sure you're applying for those this October, November. We have some upcoming presentations. We've got Dave Landry. He happened last Thursday. He's a great speaker. He comes in usually twice a year, so we'll have him again. And then again, MIFA, they're going to go through the financial aid process. I strongly recommend it. That's this coming Thursday, September 28th at 6:30. This is really an important piece. A new sort of change for 2017 and 18, the Common App has asked that students put information directly from their transcripts. We later learned that this is just for select colleges, but nonetheless, some students might be asked to put their transcript information directly into Common App. We have a school of 2,100 students. This is a very difficult sort of task to get transcripts to every single student. Certainly we can hand them out, but then what happens with that is students generally lose them. So we wanted to come up with an electronic way of students accessing their transcripts. So we have a partnership with a group called Parchment, which allows us to get transcripts to graduated students, to our alumni, for a charge. But there's a free option for current students to view their transcripts. So students would have received an email to their school email address with a code to access their transcript from Parchment. The directions were mailed out. If you have questions or if you didn't get that email, come down and see your guidance counselor. But then that's just going to require you to submit or just go into Parchment and create a transcript request, and you'll get an electronic copy of your transcript to help you with that. And just to have as well. If you have questions, please feel free to call the guidance counselors. You know, I'm always amazed at the questions I get at the end of these presentations of parents, you know, that have questions that really, that's what we're here for. I mean, the guidance counselor is here for you to help you with this process. Please don't feel bad about reaching out to us. Many parents and students like to have parental-student meetings with the guidance counselor. That takes the pressure off of students by having to answer to their parents about why they didn't do something yet, or if they did something, and that awkwardness at home. And it avoids parents having to kind of check in with students. Did you do this yet? Did you do that yet? It's just an easier conversation to have if it's the three of us, if it's the guidance counselor, the student, and the parent. We can all sort of be on the same page with the timetables that we sort of need to be worrying about. So I hope this presentation was helpful to you. Again, I will submit a link that will help you just access the presentation if you have questions. You want to scroll through it at your own leisure without this voiceover. But definitely feel free to reach out to us at any point. Reach out to the guidance counselors. Again, that's what we're here for. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope that you do come to the MIFA presentation on the 28th. If you're reviewing this presentation after that date and you didn't know about the MIFA presentation for some reason, MIFA usually holds these presentations at many area high schools, so you can check their website for future presentations. Thank you so much.